like the same people again who criticize funding, they will appeal to like kind of evolutionary kind of patterns, like humans have always been like this, which is why this is the right thing, or anecdotes, like, okay, I applied this on myself and I saw this. So I don't use my own personal example ever to like convince anyone of anything. Like this is just my N of one and this is what's worked for me. I see this in practice all the time. Like if I was to give like the same thing I did for myself for someone else who came in with acne, it wouldn't work, like, because everyone's causes, even for the same symptoms, like everyone's causes are radically different. So you have to personalize the treatment according to the evidence for like what they've come in that way. So like funding being one factor, with lower levels of evidence you have like much more scope for error than like the funding component. Like with just spouting an anecdote, there are so many things you can't control for. You can't control for the placebo effect, you can't control for like different variables, like people, when they change one thing, they also change like 10 other things at the same time. So that can be confounding the result. Like people have inherent bias. Like you see this a lot with diet camps. Like if you go to some vegan chat room or you go to like a carnivore chat room, you'll typically only see like people who have seen positive results. Like the people who don't see it are either like shunned by the community or they don't like express themselves. I know I've done this myself when I was like in both of these camps, because you get like ideologically winded up. You want to be part of a community and stuff, so you're not really going to like say like things that you aren't doing favorably. You'll tend to like be biased towards the positive side of things. So all of these issues and like many more kind of confound lower levels of research, like with just mechanisms or biochemical pathways. Also you'll see like people come and spout like, okay, insulin is bad because it will go inside this pathway and it's going to do this to like these biochemical pathways or whatever, and it's going to lead to like a fat cells changing in this way. But that's all very, very preliminary research. Like that's what scientists use to get clues to to conduct actual human studies based on those clues and test certain hypotheses and things like that. You'll also see people point to population studies, like, okay, this country is doing things in this way, so they have better outcomes. Like this is called ecological data, where you'll just see populations and you'll not really like control for any other things, but you'll just see like, okay, this country is doing this, so they seem to like have better health. But even that's very short-sighted, because the like on a country level, like people are doing 10,000 different things, along with like the one thing that you think is probably making a difference. So that's also like very low level of evidence. Even with observational studies, like they are, if they are well adjusted, like the research is actually controlling for different things, then like, I mean, for example, if you do observational study looking at the effects of, let's say, red meat on like different cancer outcomes. So just looking at association doesn't tell you much, because those people can be doing 500 things, but the researchers take the effort to adjust for smoking, to adjust for socioeconomic status, to adjust for like drinking and like fast food and a lot of different things. And even after, if you make those adjustments and you still see an association, it does infer like, okay, there's something going on here. Like, you should, it's probably causal, but it still needs to be like confirmed, like further. And like there needs to be other kinds of evidence also, like showing us to increase our confidence in that. A lot of people will worship randomized control trials also. Like there's a lot of people who only look at that and then ignore everything else. So even that's short-sighted, because randomized control trials also have their issues. Like if an RCT is running for like more than 1 year, it kind of becomes like an observational study, because then you're relying on the people to tell you what they did, rather than having them in like the center and actually like measuring what they're doing. The funding bit is like, I mean, the money it takes to run a randomized control trial is tremendous, because it takes like insane amount of money to run like a long-term randomized control trial. So there are a lot of issues like that, like within like different kinds of scientific studies. So I've kind of been like just studying this for a long time, even with statistics and how to critically like read papers and different sections, what they mean. Like I've done some courses to actually solidify my understanding in that. So I take like all of this into account and then rank the research accordingly. And I typically, I wouldn't just go if I have like one study pointing to something. I like to see like the higher levels of evidence I cited, like multiple studies from each category pointing in the same direction. And then it's just good confirmation if even other lower levels of evidence line up. Like for LDL, for example, we have all the higher levels of evidence, but if you look at ancestral populations, you'll also find that they've actually looked at many ancestral populations, and the Australian Aborigines and like different kind of ancestral populations, hunter gatherers basically. And you find that they all have like very low LDL cholesterol, which is very surprising to me, because the typical narrative is like, okay, all these ancestral like hunter gatherer diets, they're all doing like more animal foods and stuff. So they would be having like sky high LDL, but their LDLs are like somewhere around 50 to 70, which is very like surprising that way. So it's also good when you have these kind of things align, but you want to make your opinions based on like the top levels of research. And yeah, I don't just dismiss studies based on funding. Like funding can be one factor which can influence the methods of the paper. The scientists might misrepresent the results in the discussion section, but the method section like is very clear that their conclusion doesn't line up with like how they actually conducted the trial. So the funding it should just be like a factor which makes you want to analyze the study with more skepticism, which not to just like blanketly dismiss it. Because I've seen it many times. If a certain study is funded and it's wanting to like something is wanting to be biased, you can catch it. Like if you know your stuff and like the knowledge base in the area you're trying to research, you can catch discrepancies and things like that. That's how I make sense of it.
Right.